I thought I'd seen all forms of military arrogance. Cocky lieutenants, ribbon-chasing colonels, generals who acted like gods. Then I watched a four-star general challenge 6 Navy SEALs to a fight and get crushed 7-0 in under an hour. I was a staff observer at a joint U.S.-Canadian training base up north. 25 years in uniform, multiple tours, nothing prepared me for this. It wasn't the defeat that haunts me. It was the total collapse of a man who believed himself invincible. General Alexander Grant, Canadian-born, 4 American-style stars, Arctic legend, Kosovo and Iraq veteran. To him, SEALs were overhyped, great with boats and helos, fragile without them. It started in a classified brief when a SEAL calmly suggested conventional forces sometimes over-rely on firepower instead of speed. Grant took it as an insult. That night, he declared, "Strip away the Hollywood and the water boys, and you're just grunts with good marketing." The SEAL platoon leader didn't react, just stared. Next morning, Grant issued the challenge, his hand-picked team of 30 elite Canadian and U.S. troops versus the 6 SEALs. 7 scenarios, miles gear, no support assets. The SEAL captain replied, "We accept. Let's keep it clean." Grant smiled, certain he'd prove combined arms discipline beats boutique operators. He carried North American pride and a lifelong need to show Canadian forces were every bit as good as American ones. He had no idea what was coming. Final score, 7-0. Less than 60 minutes. It broke something in him no enemy ever touched.
Alexander Grant grew up in a Canadian military family taught one truth. To be seen as equal to Americans, you had to be better. That drove him from day one. Royal Military College, flawless postings, relentless climb. He was tough, precise, brilliant, but haunted by the fear of being merely good enough. Every star was armor against that fear. Combat record? Arctic patrols, NATO air-ground coordination in Kosovo, commanding a multinational division in Iraq's worst years. He'd worked alongside SEALs, admired their skill, but never bought the myth. They're effective, he'd say, but take away their enablers and they're just light infantry with better training. The spark was that brief. A SEAL's quiet comment about simplicity over firepower hit Grant's pride dead center. He heard dismissal of everything he'd built. Aides begged him to drop it, beneath his rank, unnecessary. He refused. This was his chance to prove conventional mastery trumped special operations hype on equal ground. He handpicked 30 operators, JTF-2, Rangers, Green Berets, Recon Marines. He'd command personally. Privately, he predicted, "We take them 4-2, maybe 3-1. They depend on surprise and tech. We have mass and coordination." Outwardly calm, shaking hands, joking. Inside, clenched jaw, clipped words, constant watch-checking. This wasn't training, this was validation. He believed the SEALs would be forced into his style of fight, structured, firepower-heavy, on terrain favoring numbers. A flicker of doubt crossed his mind as he watched them walk to the start line, silent, relaxed, expressionless. He crushed it. He was a 4-star general. They were just SEALs.
The 6 SEALs who showed up that morning didn't look like movie stars. No swagger, no war stories, no visible ego. Just 6 men in clean kit, moving with the quiet economy of people who have long ago stopped needing to prove anything. They were a standard platoon element from one of the West Coast teams, average age, early 30s, all combat deployed multiple times. Iraq, Afghanistan, places that don't make the news. The platoon leader, a chief petty officer we'll call Chief Harlan, had the kind of face that gave away nothing. Flat eyes, short hair going gray at the temples, voice low and even. They didn't talk much. When Grant's people tried small talk, questions about buds, favorite weapons, deployment stories, the SEALs answered politely and changed the subject. They had seen this before. conventional officers who needed to measure themselves against the myth. Their philosophy was simple, and they lived it. We don't fight, we finish. Canadian forces excel in deliberate, precise operations, long-range patrolling in Arctic conditions, sniper fire across frozen tundra, holding ground against superior numbers through fire discipline and terrain mastery. It's methodical, professional, admirable. SEALs operate on a different plane. Speed is their doctrine. Infiltration is their default. They don't defeat you. They appear inside your decision loop before you realize the game has started. They break your will before they break your body. When Grant's challenge was delivered, the SEALs didn't laugh or gloat. They gathered in a small huddle for maybe 8 minutes. No raised voices, no theatrics. Chief Harlan simply said, "We accept. Let's keep it clean." That was it. No speeches about teaching lessons, no trash talk, just acceptance, delivered with the same tone you'd use to confirm a weather report. To them, this wasn't personal. It was another training evolution. They knew exactly what Grant wanted, to drag them into a conventional fight where numbers, planning, and firepower would matter. They had no intention of giving him that fight. The exercise used Miles gear, laser transmitters on weapons, sensors on bodies. Hit registered, system beeped, you were dead. 7 scenarios across 3 environments: dense northern forest, simulated civilian village, and urban ruins. Team versus team, no external support. Each side started with full strength at the beginning of every round. Grant's plan was textbook conventional wisdom. Use superior numbers to control key terrain, channel the SEALs into kill zones, overwhelm with coordinated fire from multiple angles. In the forest, long-range engagements. In the village, interlocking fields of fire. In urban rubble, elevated positions and barriers. He briefed his 30-man team like it was a real operation. Fire discipline, mutual support, constant communication. The SEALs' preparation lasted 8 minutes. That was all. No maps spread out, no long debate. Chief Harlan gave a short nod, said one sentence. Fight it like it's real. No holding back. Then they checked weapons, drank water, and waited. Grant watched them from across the staging area and felt a small surge of confidence. They looked relaxed, too relaxed. No intensity, no urgency. He mistook calm for complacency. He had no idea it was the calm of predators who already knew how the hunt would end. The first round started at 9:17 in a dense stand of pine and spruce that swallowed sound and light. Temperature just above freezing, ground damp, visibility cut to 50 meters in places. Grant's team deployed in textbook fashion. 2 fire teams forward, 1 in reserve, overwatch on the high ground, flanking patrols. 30 men covering a frontage no 6-man element should be able to crack. Grant watched from the tactical ops tent on monitors fed by helmet cams and drone overwatch, simulated for the exercise. He was calm, almost cheerful. "They'll have to come straight at us," he told his XO. "This is our terrain. We dictate the pace." The SEALs started opposite, 6 dark shapes against the tree line. 90 seconds later, they were gone. Not scattered. Gone. Vanished into the underbrush like smoke. No radio chatter from them at all. Grant's forward teams reported nothing. No movement, no snaps of twigs, no glint of muzzle. At the 4-minute mark, the first beep started. 2 SEALs had low-crawled through a drainage ditch Grant's flankers had dismissed as impassable. They came up behind the reserve fire team, tagged 4 men in under 10 seconds. Silent lasers registering hits before anyone could react. The dead soldiers froze in place, stunned. Panic rippled across the net. Grant ordered the flanks to collapse inward, create a tighter perimeter. Too late. The remaining 4 SEALs had already split into 2 pairs, moving at angles no one anticipated. One pair flanked left, the other ghosted right. They didn't engage at range, they closed. By the time Grant's men realized the line was penetrated, the SEALs were inside the perimeter, picking off leaders first. 4 minutes and 12 seconds after start, the last mile sensor went off. Grant's entire force was dead. The monitor showed 6 SEALs standing casually in the clearing, weapons lowered, waiting. Grant stared at the screens. His mouth opened, then closed. A cold knot formed in his stomach. Something wasn't right. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He forced a laugh for the benefit of his staff. Fluke, they got lucky on infiltration. Next round we adjust. Round 2, move to mixed terrain. Forest edge bleeding into rolling hills with scattered boulders. Grant changed tactics. 3 mutually supporting elements, constant bounding overwatch, aggressive patrolling to deny infiltration. He was determined to force a stand-up fight. The SEALs used what they later called split intrusion. Instead of engaging the center, they probed all 3 elements simultaneously with noise and brief sightings, drawing each group deeper into its own sector. Within minutes, Grant's 30 men were split into 3 isolated pockets, each convinced the main threat was in front of them. Then the SEALs cut the comms. Not jammed, physically bypassed and destroyed key nodes using the exercise rules. 2 operators slipped behind lines and tagged the radio operators first. Suddenly, Grant had no eyes, no coordination. His elements started shouting into dead air. The end came faster than round 1. One by one, the pockets were flanked and wiped out. Grant watched his carefully orchestrated defense dissolve into chaos on fragmented helmet feeds. When the last beep sounded, he slammed a fist on the table. How the hell are they moving that fast? No one answered. Round 3. Urban ruins, crumbling concrete buildings, alleyways, rooftops. This was supposed to be Grant's strongest suit. He stacked his best shooters on upper floors, interlocking fields of fire. Grenades, simulated, pre-positioned at choke points. Classic urban defense. The SEALs never came through the doors or windows Grant expected. They came from below. The training site had a network of simulated storm drains and maintenance tunnels running under the blocks. Grant's team had noted them, but dismissed them as too narrow, too risky for rapid movement. The SEALs crawled through filth and freezing water for 200 meters, emerged in basements behind the strongest positions, and started climbing stairs from the inside. The first indication something was wrong was when an entire Overwatch team on the 3rd floor went offline, tagged at point-blank range before they could swing their weapons. Then another building, then another. Grant screamed orders into the net, but his men were being hunted room by room from below. When the round ended, one of Grant's Canadian snipers was visibly shaking. Grant's own hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the monitor table. He was starting to feel it, not just losing, but being outclassed in a way he had no framework to process. Round 4, hostage rescue in a 2-story compound. Objective, secure the building, extract the hostage, a dummy. Grant elected defense, ring of steel around the structure, multiple entry points covered, inner cordon guarding the hostage room. He was certain the SEALs would have to assault directly and pay a heavy price. They never fired a shot. At the 50-second mark, a single flashbang, simulated, rolled under the outer door. While Grant's outer guards turned towards the noise, 2 SEALs breached a sidewall with a muffled charge. They were inside the hallway before anyone registered the breach. The inner guard team spun, but the SEALs were already moving, low, fast, angles perfect. They tagged the guards without breaking stride, reached the hostage room, slung the dummy, and exfiltrated through a different wall. 58 seconds. 0 casualties on their side. Grant stared frozen as the monitors showed the SEALs walking calmly away from the smoking compound. One of his rangers muttered, "Jesus Christ." Grant rounded on him. "Eyes on the objective, Captain. We're not done." But his voice cracked on the last word. Round 5. Control of a simulated civilian village. Narrow streets, mixed buildings, non-combatants, role players, moving around. Rules of engagement, tight. Minimize collateral. Grant was fraying. He screamed at his team during the reset, called out lapses, demanded better discipline. 2 of his Canadian soldiers, elite men with years in JTF2, quietly stepped out of the line. One later admitted the pressure from Grant had pushed him past his limit. They withdrew from the exercise. 28 men now. The SEALs didn't target Grant once. Not a single laser touched his sensor. They didn't need to. They dismantled his formation piece by piece, flanking, isolating, forcing his men to bunch up and panic. Every time Grant tried to rally a counterattack, the SEALs were already somewhere else. His team fired hundreds of simulated rounds into empty streets while the SEALs closed from blind spots. When the round ended, Grant stood alone in the village square, surrounded by dead soldiers. The SEALs were already at the extraction point. He felt the first real stab of humiliation. Night fight in the urban ruins again, but full dark, limited illumination. Grant's team had night vision, same as the SEALs. He thought darkness would level the field, force close engagement where numbers mattered. It didn't. The SEALs owned the dark. They moved like they could see through walls. Close quarters battle became a blur of shadows and sudden beeps. Grant's men fired at ghosts, muzzle flashes giving away their positions. The SEALs closed to knife range, tagged, and vanished. At one point, Grant found himself back-to-back with his last two survivors, swinging his weapon at nothing. Then a voice behind him, calm, almost conversational. "You're too slow, sir." Chief Harlan. A laser touched Grant's chest sensor. Beep. Game over. Grant spun, but the SEAL was already gone. Final round. No specific scenario, just survival. Last team standing in the mixed terrain. Grant's remaining men were shells. No one spoke as they took positions. Morale was gone. They knew. The SEALs didn't rush. They waited until Grant's team was fully committed, then flanked wide. Within 30 seconds, two operators were behind Grant's entire line. Grant heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, on the frozen ground behind him. He turned. Chief Harlan stood 3 feet away, weapon lowered. The rest of the SEALs emerged from the trees, forming a loose semicircle. They could have lit him up. Every sensor on Grant's vest could have screamed at once. Instead, Harlan stepped forward and tapped Grant lightly on the shoulder with 2 fingers. "Game over, General." No smirk, no triumph, just fact. The scoreboard read 7-0. Total elapsed time, 48 minutes, 27 seconds. Grant stood there in the cold, breath fogging, as his entire command structure lay dead around him. In 48 minutes, 6 men had dismantled everything he believed about warfare, command, and himself.
The final beep faded into the cold air. Silence fell over the training ground like a shroud. General Grant stood alone in the middle of the frozen clearing, rifle hanging loose at his side, breath coming in short, visible bursts. Around him lay 30 dead soldiers, some sitting against trees, others flat on their backs, staring at the sky. No one spoke, no one looked at him. He didn't move for a long time. I was watching from the observation tent 50 meters away. I had seen men break before, under fire, under loss, under guilt. But this was different. This was a man whose entire identity had just been surgically dismantled in front of subordinates he had hand-picked and led for years. He didn't rage, he didn't blame. He simply deflated. When he finally walked back to the tent, his steps were slow, deliberate, like an old man carrying weight he no longer understood. His face was gray. The 4 stars on his collar caught the weak northern light, but they looked suddenly cheap. The debrief was scheduled for the main briefing room. Everyone expected Grant to cancel it, save face, call it a good evolution, move on. He didn't. He walked in, took his seat at the head of the table, and waited while the SEALs filed in opposite him. Chief Harlan sat directly across, expression neutral, hands folded. Grant looked at each of his own men in turn. Some couldn't meet his eyes. Then he spoke. His voice was quiet, almost hoarse. "I was wrong." That was all at first, just those 3 words. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I evaluated you gentlemen incorrectly. I thought superior numbers and planning would prevail in a controlled environment. I was mistaken, thoroughly." He paused, looked down at the table. "I owe you an apology, all of you." The room stayed silent. No one from his side spoke up to defend him. No one needed to. The scoreboard outside already said everything. Chief Harlan finally replied, voice even. "No apology needed, sir. You gave us a good fight. We just trained for this." It wasn't condescension. It was professional respect, and somehow that made it worse. Grant nodded once, stood, and left the room without another word. Later that night, I saw him alone on the porch of the officers' quarters, staring into the dark. He didn't smoke, didn't drink, just stood there until the temperature dropped well below freezing. 30 years of command,
4 decades of building a reputation as one of the finest strategic minds in NATO, reduced to 48 minutes of simulated combat against 6 men who never once raised their voices. Rank hadn't protected him. Experience hadn't protected him. Only one thing had mattered that day: effectiveness. And he had none of it.
The SEALs taught us more in one afternoon than most war colleges manage in a year. Speed beats strength. Simplicity beats complexity. Individual initiative beats rigid hierarchy. But the deepest lesson wasn't tactical, it was human. Grant failed because he needed to win, not just the exercise, but the argument. He turned training into a referendum on his life's work. Pride blinded him to the obvious. 6 men who live the fight every day will always outmatch 30 who simulate it. He built elaborate plans while the SEALs relied on basic principles: move fast, stay invisible, end it before it starts. He demanded perfection from his team while cracking under the pressure he himself created. And most damning, he believed rank and resume could substitute for raw capability. The SEALs never targeted Grant personally until the very end, not out of deference, but because they didn't need to. They destroyed his command by removing its parts one by one until the general stood alone. That's the real difference. Conventional forces fight to control. Special operations fight to finish. For me, the observer who thought he'd seen it all, the lesson was simpler and more brutal. Never challenge people whose job is real war to a game. Their silence isn't arrogance, it's experience. And experience, on that day, spoke louder than 4 stars ever could.
I saw General Grant one last time, months later, at a NATO conference in Brussels. He had retired quietly not long after the exercise. No ceremony, no farewell tour, just gone. He looked smaller. The posture was still there, the precise movements, but something essential had been hollowed out. We exchanged brief words, polite, distant. He asked about my family. I asked about his plans. He smiled the way men do when they no longer believe their own answers. He never mentioned the exercise. Neither did I. But as he walked away down the corridor, I remembered him standing in that clearing, surrounded by the wreckage of his certainty. That day, I saw a truth few ever witness up close. War doesn't care about your rank. It doesn't respect your record. It only respects one thing: who can still move when the shooting starts. 6 men proved they could. 1 general learned, too late, that he couldn't. 7-0. A score that will follow Alexander Grant to his grave. And every time I hear someone in uniform talk about real warfare versus special operations theatrics, I think of that cold northern morning. And I stay quiet. Some lessons you don't teach, you survive.